He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. Matthew 10:40. Civilization is a creation of the mind of man. Civilization is duality, and in civilization we find duality everywhere. Not until we understand this form of duality, which is the mind in action. Mind in action is peculiar because mind is a relative thing and not a reality. Mind is an effect, it is not a reality. And civilization is the result of mind. Civilization is formulation in man's mind according to what he thinks civilization should be. Man's mind being entirely ignorant of the truth, then he has formulated a civilization according to his own belief, his own ideas. And because he's formulated this civilization, we are then caught up in it. And all over the world we see the strife of duality, the strife of opposites, striving against one another. And not until we begin to realize what civilization is can we extricate ourselves from the difficulties we create in our own minds. We build civilization. Man builds civilization. It is a formulation of man's own mind according to his own beliefs and his standards. So you will always have strife in civilization until we begin to understand what civilization is. Now, a civilization that has given the promise to man of a healthy, happy, satisfying, and full life has led him into the deserts of fear and insecurity. On the one hand, you are promised one thing, and the other you fall into the pit. The present machine and power age has given to small minorities the tremendous privilege of domination of the individual, which combined with monopolistic financial autocracy has put in the hands of a few the power of economic life and death over the whole nation. The reaction of the individual is to organize strong protective groups, which has given birth to labor and other councils leading towards communistic ideals. On the one hand, you see you have the formation of groups on one side and you have the formation of groups on the other side. As you begin to understand then the formulation of man's mind, you will see how hideous these things are. But when you're caught up in them, you can't get out of them because the whole world is caught up in the formulation of man's own mind, and it is not truth. Jesus came to show the truth, and in fact, what did they do? Because they lived in duality, because they lived in strife, because they were opposing forces, he tried to show them how to unite those two opposing forces, and then they would disappear. But because they saw that if the opposition was destroyed, they would be destroyed permanently with the opposition because they were the opposition. Just the same as you have in a political organization today, no matter what it is, maybe one side or the other, red or black or whatever the case you may see. If you try to combine these particular political societies, whoever they are, you will immediately destroy you because you want to destroy the division. But they will destroy you because they think that you're trying to destroy one particular opposite group to another. So therefore one or the other will destroy you. So it's the same because of man's mind is living in duality. It's all through the relative world. And not until we begin to see the truth of this, we'll be able to bring about a better state of affairs in the world and in true civilization. Do you think that we are civilized? I don't think so. When you killing people and murdering people by the thousands and so forth, you think you're civilized. I think we're much more uncivilized than we were many years ago. The fact that we didn't kill as many people in the Stone Age as we do now. In fact, we create more instruments of destruction for the purpose of killing. Therefore, do you think now that we are civilized, any more civilized than the individual were in the Stone Age? Our minds have progressed along scientific lines, no doubt, but we are not more civilized. Civilization that has given this age advanced medical scientific knowledge is now striving to cope with an overwhelming breakdown of health of the people of the world. Why is that? We've got more scientific medical knowledge now than we have ever had. But we've got more hospitals and more institutions than we ever had. And there's more sick people than we ever had. Of course, if you didn't have the sick people, you couldn't have the scientific knowledge. It's true, isn't it? Well, the whole thing is a farce, is it not, when we look at it properly? The storehouse of the mind of man had promised a wealth of beauty in word, thought, and deed, but man has been deceived and misled, and finally deserted in the wilderness of confusion. Civilization. The failure to maintain mental balance in the face of stress and strain of modern conditions is evidenced by the fact that there is an average of 1 out of every 5 people that need mental treatment, and the breakdowns in health are double that number. The spiritual aspect of human life has been broken up and confused in a clash of personalities, and is perplexed with the many dogmas and creeds, ideals and beliefs, fighting each other in the pursuit of domination, like a draft of logs on a placid river being overwhelmed and scattered by a blast of an invisible hurricane, and now caught up in a bank of mud of hate and superstition. So the whole spiritual world we have in our own civilization is a clash of personalities. We find there we have hatreds between one particular section and another, and we have superstition. One is throwing mud at the other because of their belief, of their different dogmas. Oh, what a state of civilization. The formulations of man's mind, that's all it is. If man's mind cannot go further than this, then where are we to land? If we can't see and discern these things except being caught up in them all the time, how can we ever escape from them? We do not want to escape from them, because that would be foolish. But we want to discern them and see them for what they are, and know that they are formulations of man's own mind, and they are not the reality that is waiting to express itself now. That is not a formulation of the mind, but a living, expressing intelligence of wisdom and love. Civilization indeed stands accused at the bar of human suffering. Why is this? And what of the future of mankind? The solution is not to be found through conferences, blueprints, or through the substitution of new leaders for old, and so on. The solution obviously lies in the creators of the problem, in the creators of the mischief, of the hate, and the enormous misunderstanding that exists between human beings. Of course, we know that this hate and this misunderstanding is fired and increased and encouraged by people who have various motives for their own self-expression, for their own ends, while the poor, innocent, ignorant fool is caught up in it. But if that individual begins to see and understand the cause of the problem, the cause of the mischief, and he sees that he is antagonistic to another, there is something wrong somewhere. And if you begin to see where your antagonisms arise, then there is an opportunity of rectifying the condition, of dissolving these things, and allowing that which is real in itself from manifesting itself. The time will come, of course, when only men of wisdom will be the heads of great organizations, because the individuals will demand it. But the individual is now, in the civilization we have, is the so-called formulation in man's mind of man's own creation, of his own problems, of his own desires, of his own beliefs, which are more often antagonistic to the other. Therefore, the creator of this mischief, of these problems, is the individual, you and I, and not the world as we think of it. For we are civilization. We are the world. The world is your relationship with each other. For the world is not separate from you and me. The world society is the relationship that we establish or seek to establish between one another. The world is the projection of ourselves, and to understand the world we must first understand ourselves, no matter how we might try to excuse ourselves by putting the blame somewhere else. The problem remains the same, the understanding of the self. The self is a bundle of memories, a bundle of experiences. The self is the product of the past, the hopes of the future. Is that not so? That's what the self is. Desires, hopes, accumulations of memories, antagonisms, experiences, and all these things, that is the self. Therefore, the self is the result of the past, is it not? Well, the past is dead, but the dead bury the dead. And seeing that the self is all these things that have a beginning and an ending, they have no lasting qualities whatsoever. The self then becomes the illusion. And if the self, with all these things, antagonisms, memories, because memories do bring antagonisms and beliefs, a belief upon this and that, because you have one belief, another person have another belief. You have a particular nationality, and another person has another nationality. Therefore you have conflict, because one believes that one is separate from the other. Therefore the self lives in separation. But you will notice that the only living thing that exists at all is the presence, is it not? That is eternal and ever-present. It has got nothing at all to do with memories, it's got nothing at all to do with experiences, it's got nothing at all to do with these things whatsoever. The presence is the living presence, the God that is alive and living now and is eternal, that had no beginning and no ending. Anything that has a beginning and an ending, you will notice that the end is in the beginning. Finished already. Gone. Take a memory. Why does a memory affect you? It's done, it's finished, is it not? But most people are so stupid that they carry it along with them. Naturally, we need memory, how to speak and commune with one another. But that is not the memory I want to show you. The memory is the accumulations you have in your mind of antagonisms, of greed, of the self, your hopes, and your struggles. And memory can be removed as soon as you realize the presence and discern what your memories mean to you. But if you're caught up in your memories, you are caught up in them. Anything that floats before your mind, you should look upon it without identifying yourself with it. You must look upon it as something that is a formulation of your mind, which it is. As you look upon it as that, you look upon it as something that is really relative to yourself. But if you identify yourself with it, you're caught up in it, are you not? Your memory of last night becomes so strong as with you today. Why? Because you do not live in the presence. Because you haven't discerned that it is a memory, it's a formulation of your own mind. I know that it's difficult sometimes because you've got the habit of being caught up in your thoughts and your images, your ideas, and your formulations. Therefore, a memory is a formulation in experience. If that is going to affect you in the present, then you have to deal with it, haven't you? Because the now always exists. It is obvious that the tempo of life is directed mostly on the material, emotional, and scientific planes. This has increased during the last decade. The pendulum has swung too far without the compensating balance of a developed mental and spiritual consciousness. Thus, the destructive mental outlook of the individual has become a crystallized basis for human reactions. The emotions of fear, envy, greed, selfishness, and vanity have created a confused mental condition which prohibits constructive and creative reactions. The result is the slow but sure outpicturing on the physical plane we see in the world today. What we see is the effects, not causes. The effects we see today is the causes of yesterday. And no matter how we try to cure the effects, we will never do so until we remove the cause. What are we trying to do today? Cure the effects. It can never be done. Never. And those people who are caught up in these effects are the intellectuals without wisdom. You can read books and books as long as you live. But do you think you can find the truth in a book? Jesus said, you search the scriptures and you think you find eternal life? You make a mistake. It can only be found within yourselves. In fact, a few fishermen would do much more in UNO than all the conglomeration of the intelligentsia you see there today. Is it not so that the mass of individuals has created higher false values of temporal and temporary things, while only a few seek the ecstasy or enthusiasm of peace, love, and harmony through spiritual understanding? But spiritual understanding only comes through the process of understanding ourselves, which is not an isolating process. Everyone today is trying to isolate themselves and separate themselves from the other. It's the beginning of the greatest struggle the world has ever seen. And those who recognize this see this writing on the wall. And why? Because of the ignorance of mankind. Because of the teachings that man has had in the past through ignorance. Not understanding the teachings of Jesus. Jesus was a man of God. A tremendous, powerful expression of the Almighty. He walked about in sandals, cloak over his shoulders. He revealed the Christ of God. His religion was the true religion, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. But then some people came along and formulated an idea, a religion out of his sayings. And then they built great big buildings and gathered all the finances they could possibly get. and put them all into a great big building of gold and silver and all beautiful things inside. And on the outside we find squalor, filth, and poverty. The religion of Jesus is not the religion of today, and never can be. And not until the religion of today dies can the teachings of Christ be revised and revealed to man. To be is to be related, and there is no such thing as living in isolation. But every person wants to live in isolation. It is the lack of right relationship that brings about conflict, misery, and strife. If we can create true relationship in however small our world may be, it will be like a wave extending outwards all the time. It begins to have its effect not only in the place that you are, but externalizes itself through the whole of the ether of space. But what do we happen to see today? We see the same thing taking place. Isolationism, separation, and which is the destruction of mankind. If we can bring about transformation of our relationship with one another, not as superficial, but a radical transformation, then we will begin to actively transform the world which is ourselves. But real revolution is not in accordance with any particular pattern, either the right or the left. If you try to form then yourselves according to a pattern, you're only going to create more misery and trouble for yourselves. But some other pattern will be formed in opposition to yours. So therefore that's why you have the right and the left. Two patterns, one on the right and the other on the left. They are opposing each other, living in duality. Can you have then peace while the world is divided in such a way? Never. And who is responsible for this? The individual, of course, because he hasn't awakened up to realize the truth. So then, the real revolution is not in accordance with any particular pattern, either of the right or the left, but a revolution of values. A revolution of values away from temporal and temporary things and the influences of environment to values of that which is eternal and ever-present. To find these true values that will bring about a radical transformation and regeneration, it is essential to understand ourselves. Self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, therefore the beginning of transformation and regeneration. This understanding is spreading to all parts of the world, but it is not as deep as it should be to become an uplifting force, because although most of us are discontented, our discontent is merely a channel to bring about a certain result, instead of setting us aflame, causing us to question life and the whole process of existence. We try to get a result. Don't you see, if you only try to get a result, how can you understand yourselves? Is it possible? It's like your meditation. You try to meditate upon a saint or a master, and you think by doing so, you'll acquire virtue. You're very foolish. You can only acquire virtue by understanding yourselves. And meditation is not a process of self-hypnosis, but a process of revealing yourself to yourself. And as that goes, each one will find the true source of his being. So some of you try to concentrate, and you'll sit and you'll say, I want to concentrate now. It's necessary for me to have concentration. All right, you may concentrate, but what of it? If you do concentrate, do you know yourselves any better through your concentration? You'll acquire the faculty, all right, But what use is that faculty which is going to destroy you and others at the same time by not knowing yourself? If your faculty is greater and you have no wisdom, is it not what was happening in the world today? True meditation is the understanding of the self, so that that which is eternal and ever-present, which is not a formulation, which is not something not made up in the mind, but gives expression of itself through the mind, that is cleared and clarified through understanding. So that the formulations and your beliefs and your memories, they're antagonistic and fixtures and a hindrance to the expression, will be known to yourselves. Therefore, those formulations which have the beginning and the ending in itself dissolve away, for that which is greater will take its place. That is the expression of Jesus, the Master. And he does not ask you to worship an idol or worship him without understanding yourselves. Seek and you shall find. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Therefore it is more important to us to find these things out for ourselves, because self-knowledge cannot be given to us by another. Nor is it found in any book, nor in the mere casual wish to find out about oneself of much value. There must be deep discernment of our thoughts, motives, and actions. When the fever of hate abates, we will feel the strength of that which of itself is love, the only influence that will bring in a new world era is that which is love. You do not create love. But when you dissolve all these things away that are in opposition to love, love shall remain, because it's an eternal thing. But anything that has a beginning and an ending, your hate, your envy, your jealousy, your acquisitiveness, your antagonisms, the end is in the beginning. It's dead already. It's a formulation of your own mind. And as soon as you see it and understand yourself, it will fall away. But you must not identify yourself with it. Your real self is in every other self. You cannot divide yourself. You cannot separate yourself. There is no such thing as isolation of the real self. It's an utter impossibility. Therefore, the self that lives in isolation is dead already. The end is in the beginning. The beginning is in the end. As soon as you see it, no longer remains with you, falls away. I wish I could give you that which is real. It's so tremendous. It's such a wonderful thing. It's beyond the comprehension of man. But when you have no antagonisms, when you have no hates, you have no jealousies, you have no envies, you have none of these formulations that you create in your mind that cause differences in your relationship with others. When these then dissolve away, the ever-present, which is not a formulation of the mind, which never had a beginning and never has an end, it is eternal and ever-present. Even if it's only a little pebble out of the brook of love, at first, it will slay the Goliath of world selfishness and hate. Things that appeal to the five senses mind are not realities. They are misleading and illusionary. They are temporary and temporal, and are only of value to the individual while they are the object of material and emotional desire, which leads to conflict and antagonism. The mind of man is confused with crystallized concepts, conflicts, ideas, dogmas, creeds, and nationalities that only aid further distorted reactions to our experiences. Therefore, because of our confused concepts, our experiences become more diabolical every day. And very true what the prophet said. They worship God with their mouths, but their hearts are not there. The mind of man, then, is where these ideas and images and beliefs are formulated. And if you continue to misunderstand yourself and not make any effort to understand yourself, you will increase those distorted reactions, actions, and your experiences become more diabolical every day. From this basis springs up race mind and breeds the seed of war. To follow truth you cannot be tethered, therefore to know yourself there must be an awareness, the alertness of mind in which there is freedom from all beliefs and ideals, because beliefs and ideals only give you a color, preventing true perception. The alertness of mind is necessary. That alertness of mind is not a positive state, but it is a passive state of alertness, where the mind is alert all the time, yet in that passive state, to allow the revealing of everything that is in the mind itself. Nothing can be left in the mind. Everybody is wanting, are they not, to understand their dreams, is it not? You all want to understand what your dreams are and what they mean. It is not the dream that is necessary to be understood, but yourselves. And when you understand yourselves, your dreaming will cease. So it is always the self that must be understood, just the thing in your meditation. It is not the object of your meditation that must be understood, but yourself, who is the meditator. And when meditation then is complete in itself, the meditator will disappear, dissolve into nothingness. And it will be these words again that will come into your mind. You will know they are true. I of myself am nothing. It's the Spirit of the Father within me that doeth these things. Escape. It prevents you from discovering what yourself is. If you want to know what you are, you cannot have a belief in what you are not. If I am greedy, envious, violent, merely to have an ideal of non-violence is of little value. If I am antagonistic, if I hate my brother, is there any use of praying to God? I don't think so. My prayers will be idolatry, would they not? Yet that's the prayers of the world and the people who live in the world, is it not? But to know that one is greedy and violent, to know and understand it, requires deep perception. It demands honesty and clarity of thought. In this alone, there is freedom. Now, don't blame it on someone else. I say to you, I told you so. You hear what the doctor said? I told you so. Understand yourself, then you won't say such stupid things. So the understanding of what you are, whatever it may be, ugly or beautiful, kind or unkind, the understanding of what you are without distortion is the beginning of virtue. You don't have to excuse yourself. If you excuse yourself, how can you understand yourself? If you try to escape, how can you understand yourself? As you try to pray or concentrate or meditate, you're trying to escape from what you are you not? You're trying to obtain virtue by some form of meditation upon a saint or a master. Are you any better off? You are only hypnotizing yourselves. That's all. Most people are hypnotized now. What they want is dehypnotization, not hypnotization. And immediately begin to realize that the wonderful truth, and we know ourselves, the knowing of the self is the dehypnotization of the individual. So, the understanding of what you are, whether it be ugly or beautiful, kind or unkind, the understanding of what you are without distortion is the beginning of virtue. Virtue that merely brings out respectability is not understanding and freedom. Being virtuous and becoming virtuous are two different things. Being virtuous comes through understanding what you are. Becoming virtuous is covering up what you are. To merely have an ideal of what you are not is not virtue, but coming face to face with what you are is virtue. Virtue is an understanding of what you are, therefore brings freedom, while so-called virtue is illusion and bondage. If you do not know what you are, what are your hindrances to the expression of reality? Striving to become virtuous will not make you virtuous, nor will it enable you to express reality. Reality can only be found in understanding what you are, and to understand what you are brings freedom. And in freedom is reality. Reality cannot be found in anything else but freedom. Now, therefore, there is no use seeking reality until such time as you have found the reality, found that freedom. And the freedom comes through understanding the self and all the formulations of the mind that are preventing you from that freedom. Freedom from fear of what you are or what is. Virtue is not a matter of time. Virtue is freedom, immediate release. Is this a matter of time? It's an immediate release from those formulations and conditions which you create. An immediate release from them, I tell you, and that which is freedom is ever present. Freedom is not something you formulate in your mind. Freedom is elimination of that which is hindering its expression. And in freedom, there is reality. Virtuous freedom, immediate release. Is this a matter of time? Are you kind, generous, affectionate through the process of time? Will you be kind the day after tomorrow? Can kindness be thought in terms of time? Affection, mercy, generosity are the true expressions of life. They are the only solution for all our problems. But our so-called virtue cannot solve any problem. Therefore, there is no virtue in becoming, only in being. So there is no need to try and solve our problems by the methods that we are trying to today. When you have different nationalities, you have antagonisms and isolationism. You have greed, you have envy, and all these things that create war and destruction. How can you solve your problems when these things are present? When only affection, mercy, generosity are the true expressions of life, and they are the only solution for all our problems. Our problems are not only world problems, but our own problems, the problems that exist in our own homes and our own lives, everywhere. These lessons are given for the purpose of creating pure thinking, and only in pure thinking can there be freedom. The jailer must first free his own mind before the realization of the truth comes. It is the first step. And to go to a master, a true master, the first thing he does is to clear the mind. I often thought that I knew something. I had been 5 times to India, had lived with the yogis, I'd practiced yoga, and I'd practiced all these things for years. I could do many wondrous things long before. I knew that. But when I reached that particular state, and I found a master that could really teach and advise me and show me the way, when I thought I knew everything, and he told me in plain words, my son, it doesn't matter very much whether it is true or not, does it? And it all fell away from me like that at once. It was the most cleansing process I have ever had, and I will never forget it. And that's what I want you to do too. It doesn't matter very much whether it is true or not. Any of the formulations you make up in your mind, because they are made up in your mind. They are not the truth. The truth is not made up. Therefore, that which is made up, it doesn't matter whether it is true or not. It has no significance. Can you say that you have goodwill towards all? But goodwill is essential. Otherwise, we can never solve our problems. Have your politicians, your leaders in religion and commerce, goodwill towards all? If they have not goodwill, how can their followers have goodwill towards all? Then what is the use of conferences and the like without goodwill, which is real affection, and without it we can never solve our problems? Yes, I could feel I could swear at them. Sure I could. Yes, I know I could too. If I had anything to do with it, I would. Perhaps someday I will. Who knows? So some of us, like politicians, and the vast majority of humans, are unkind. They have not got the goodwill that is the only solution to all problems. Since they have not goodwill, it cannot be a mere question of time whether there will be goodwill tomorrow or 10 years hence. Now, if kindness and mercy are not a matter of time, why is it that we are not kind now? If we can understand why we are not kind, this understanding being immediate now, we shall be kind immediately now. Then we will forget what nationality we are, to what religion we belong, what our differences are. We will immediately be generous and kind. My intention to be kind is futile if I do not know the cause of my unkindness. What is it that makes me unkind? Therefore I must know the whole process of my thinking and upon what my thoughts are built. Are your thoughts not built upon your memory, your antagonisms, your beliefs, your nationalities, your formulations? You understand them and how they come about? When I see the falseness of the structure, it will immediately fall away, so the study of oneself becomes more important than becoming virtuous. This study must be continuous if we would have goodwill now and always. We must not merely study to achieve a result, because if we seek a result, we put an end to inquiry, to discovery, and to freedom. The more we know of ourselves, our passions, our greeds, our emotions, our hates, and all the formulations we have in our minds, and the cause of them, the more deeply we know ourselves. Through this knowing comes freedom, a liberation from the entanglements of fear which brings about beliefs, dogmas, and nationalisms, ideologies, and the hideous inventions of the mind that keeps itself isolated and in fear. Why do you want protection? It is not your protection becomes aggression. Why do you want protection? Because you want, that's why. You want to acquire because of your desires. You want protection to protect that which you have. And that which you haven't got. That's civilization, is it not? Living in duality. When there is freedom, there is the discovery of that which is eternal. Without this freedom, merely asking what is eternal or reading books about the eternal has no value at all. The eternal God, whatever name you like to call it, which is not a name or a word or an idea, can only be discovered by yourself. It comes into being when the mind is free, unfettered by beliefs, by prejudices, not caught up in the net of ill will, nationalities, and the like. A mind so caught up is not prepared to receive reality. The discovery of truth brings true and lasting happiness, and to discover there must be an understanding of oneself. Therefore the whole search is not for an answer to the problem, but understanding the self which is the problem. That is the saving of humanity. No matter how you try to solve your problem, if you do not understand yourselves, there'll be no solving of your problem, because you are the problem. Therefore, to merely change the pattern of the outer without understanding our inner thought, feelings, has very little value in our own world today. When the inner transformation takes place, then the outer will be transformed with intelligence, with compassion, with care, goodwill, and understanding. Because you have no understanding within yourselves, your outer world will not have it either. If there is not goodwill within you, there shall be no goodwill external to you. Therefore it's that which you must understand. What is preventing goodwill? The world which is ourselves can only be raised in consciousness in the first instance by the action of the individual. Then the seeker who seeks out his or her own hindrances is helping humanity and will attain the Christ consciousness now in performing a significant part in bringing ever nearer the kingdom of God on earth. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. He who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Matthew 10. We see then that the outer is the relative. Jesus was speaking of the Christ within all. He was speaking of the Christ that exists in every soul, the mother, the daughter, the son, the wife, and the husband. Is it not necessary then that we should dispense with all these trappings that hinder the expression of the Christ, the only begotten Son of the Father, who rests in the Father's bosom forever and expresses himself in every human being. This is the life of God. And as we suckle from his breast, we take from him his own qualities, as a child takes its milk from its mother. So do we take the life of God that is his to become ours. In that life, then, there is peace, there is mercy, there is love, and there is wisdom. That's the only lasting thing. All else is formulations in man's mind, just like his own civilization. Peace comes when man begins to understand himself, and in that understanding there is virtue. And virtue is in being now, not in some time trying to become something, but living that presence that is eternal, present now. Therefore, search your minds for your own formulations, for your memories, for these things that are hindering the expression of that which is eternal and ever present. In that search alone is inspiration. In that search alone is wisdom. In that search alone is love. In that search alone is reality. Benediction. O eternal beloved, thy nature is born in every soul, yet covered up with the ignorant self. When I discerned the nature of the self that covered up thy beauty, I was freed. Then I found that this freedom alone was virtue. What I thought was virtue was but an illusion in which I was bound, for there was no virtue in the self. But now, O Eternal One, I'm free through understanding myself, without condemnation, without fear. I found freedom and love. Then I found thee, my eternal beloved. This is my virtue, O eternal, ever-present one.